Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Tuesday, March 10th, 2026 episode of The Marco Dre Show. Thank you for tuning in here. Today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best hour of radio. We're informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. I've got such a great show lined up for everybody today. I hope you'll enjoy it very much. You won't hear any of this anywhere else, so make sure you stick around for that. There's a lot of profound news coming out that hasn't been reported in the Western press that is really crucial right now to where we are in this Iran war, and of course we enter day 11 today with really no end in sight, I don't believe, despite what you're hearing on the mainstream news. This came out yesterday, but it said on Sunday evening, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir's homes were actually hit by Iran in airstrikes, and it's been suggested that Netanyahu's younger brother may have died and that Ben-Gvir has been seriously injured. Now, they're saying Ben-Gvir was in a car accident. That's why he's out of the public eye. That's why he's been hurt. This is what they're saying. I haven't found information that Netanyahu's younger brother has been killed. I do know that he does live in Jerusalem, so that is a possibility. But this is taking another level now. Now we're going back and forth with these decapitation strikes on actual government officials. Now, Netanyahu's brother is a civilian. He's not in the government, so I'm not sure if he was in the home or not. So very awful if that did take place, because, again, he has no stake in this, really. These are horrible things to hear, folks. You never want to hear that these officials are killed and things of that nature. Really, you don't. And this is going to cause the war to go on further. It's going to cause unease. People are going to be at each other's throats still. And this will be fought till the last bit, it seems like. It's blood for blood at this point. What's also confirmed right now, though, a few days ago, the Iranians now took retaliation against Israel's oil infrastructure. And what they did was they bombed Israel's Bazan Group oil refinery inside of Haifa. It's in central Israel. This is their largest oil refinery, by the way. Gives many people electricity throughout the country. This has major ties to India as well. The IRGC stated last week that the attack was carried out with a Khyber-Shaken solid fuel ballistic missile. And Iran claims that the action was in response to recent U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran's oil deposits and, of course, their energy infrastructure as well. So, what are we being told now? As of now, we're being told by the Iranians they are only beginning to just use heavy missiles from now on. These are bombs with a 1-ton warhead attached to them. They're also beginning to use their cluster bombs. We've seen these. They disperse smaller munitions midair over a larger surface area and cause significant damage when they strike the ground. Go take a look at the Tel Aviv skyline at night sometime. You'll see these in the sky. It's unbelievable, really. We haven't even heard anything about them using the hypersonic missiles yet or them being deployed, but we know they have access to them. So that's something we should be on the lookout for as well, because they will eventually get to these. I told you last week, they're going to be starting with their older stockpiles of munitions and weapons. We have yet to see the technology the Iranians have and what they can actually do with them. So I think that's something to keep in mind. They're nowhere near being depleted, folks, just so we're clear on all this. This goes to show you that Iran, is letting the Israelis know that they can penetrate through the Iron Dome air defense system. They can hit direct targets. And again, they can find Israeli government officials should they like to. I think that's what they're showing right now. Now, whether, again, anyone's been killed, I don't know. People have not even seen Netanyahu anywhere inside of Israel since this war began. I doubt he's inside the country. But the precedent has been set. And this precedent has the U.S. and Israel saying that, we'll take out your leadership. Well, hey, We're Iranians, we'll take out your leadership too. We'll take out your embassies. We'll take out your military bases. We'll do all this too, if that's the way you want to play this game. We'll hit your desalinization plants. We'll hit your oil refineries. We can do that too. By the way, we're now hearing from our own government that Iran is defeated. I don't know how this is being championed. I have no idea how this is true when the war is still easily going on. The war is being close to being complete. We're ahead of schedule. The war will end on our terms. Iran's stockpiles are depleted. The Iranians are calling and asking for a deal. I don't believe any of this right now, but I'm in a generous mood today. Okay, fine. I'm in a generous mood. Let's assume all this is correct. Let's take it one step at a time. How can a war be considered won when we haven't achieved any of our objectives? We haven't stopped their nuclear weapons program or achieved any type of treaty with them about reducing these limitations or preventing them from happening. I think that would be a major big deal because that's the only thing they keep harping on right now is the nuclear weapons program. In fact, today the IAEA just came out and said that it is likely that much of the enriched uranium that the Iranians had, that we said was obliterated last June, is still very much in their possession. It's likely that they still have it. Scott Ritter agrees and said that the same exact thing. They probably have about 450 kilograms of this 60% enriched uranium in their possession. They probably have the proper centrifuges to further enrich that to what would be necessary to create a nuclear weapon. So that's another cause for concern. So we haven't achieved that front at all, not even close, despite blowing up various nuclear facilities. We haven't stopped their ballistic missile program. Clearly, again, go look at the night sky in Israel. It is full of incoming missiles that are lethal and they are hitting their targets. Still firing all throughout the Middle East for now. The Strait of Hormuz, still very much closed, preventing all import and export shipping from the region, which again is having a great effect on the local, regional economies of the region. Obviously, it's having an uptick on what's taking place around the globe. It's beginning to hit the markets. None of the Iranian proxies have been stopped. Hezbollah still fighting with Israel in the south. Hamas still has yet to be defeated. The Houthi rebels inside Yemen haven't bowed out from even entering this conflict. And what about the Iranian people themselves? Are they freed yet? Something tells me if the regime is currently functioning and they're electing new leadership on their own terms, despite what the United States has been saying, that would be a definite no. I think you might all agree with me. And guess what? The State Department, I just found this out yesterday evening, asked the Iranians for yet another ceasefire. This is the second time they've asked for this. It's unbelievable. So how can we say we're winning this when we're asking them for ceasefires? Is the ceasefire, I guess, in place so we could pretend that we've won this conflict? I really don't know. Could it be like what happened last June, where we come in, we help the Israelis by dropping a couple bombs on an empty building, and we say, hey, look, we won. Look at us. We've won this conflict. We stopped the evil Iranians, and now it's all over. We've taken out their nuclear facilities. We've stopped their enrichment, and then we move on. Is that where we are right now? Foreign Minister Arachi explained to Kirsten Welker on Meet the Press on Sunday. Take a listen to what he had to say about the possibility of a ceasefire.
Obviously, this time is different from the previous time. Last time we accepted the ceasefire, but this time is quite different, and the reason is obvious. Last time they attacked us, they made aggression against us, they killed our people, they destroyed our places, and then asked for a ceasefire, and we accepted out of good faith because we were only exercising the act of self-defense. And when the aggression was stopped, we stopped too. But it didn't bring about peace. And now this year they again started to attack us. And again they have, they are killing our people. They are killing, girl students. They are attacking hospitals. Freshwater desalinations. Refineries. Everywhere, people have been killed, places have been destroyed, and now they want to ask for a ceasefire again. Well, this doesn't work like this. So there should be a permanent end of the war. And unless we get to that, I think we need to, continue fighting.
Does that sound like he's ready for a ceasefire? To accept a ceasefire? Not in the slightest. So the Iranians must feel at least good about what they're doing, I would have to say. I think you might all agree with me on this one. But if they're not agreeing to it, how can we say the war's at an end? What he's saying is there needs to be terms to end the conflict. That means everybody, first of all, stops. And I would imagine there would be some kind of security cooperation agreement between Iran, of course, and its neighbors, and the United States within the Middle East. That's what I would imagine would take place moving forward. Now, whether that happens or not, I can't tell you, but I would imagine they're ready to keep fighting. They sound very confident, and it doesn't sound like anyone is going to be accepting a ceasefire from the United States anytime soon. By the way, it just came out today that President Trump called President Putin on the phone for an hour. And it was reported that he knows that he made a large mistake with starting this war. And he wants to find a way out. And I'll remind you, if things are going so well, if we are going to win this war with Iran and get everything we want, and that Iran is going to kowtow to our demands, the new supreme leader is a lightweight, why call President Putin? He called to talk to him about the Iran war and, of course, the war in Ukraine. They spoke for an hour. That's what it was. That's what's been said. He's going to side with BRICS anyway on this. He's going to side with Iran. They're a much closer ally to them than we are. By the way, he's already excoriated India for their diplomacy with the United States' demands not to buy the Russian sanctioned oil, which Scott Bessent touted about over the weekend. And by the way, it's also its relations with Israel as well. So they're looking for a way out. The United States is looking for a way out of this. It's not the other way around. And I'm looking at a Wall Street Journal article. It says Trump advisors urge him to find Iran exit ramp, fearing political backlash. Is that why we're getting this rhetoric? The war could end really soon? What would be the reason for them to want to end the war as quickly as possible? Because first of all, it's not popular. That's number one. It's not popular. It's not helping the economy, which he needs to win the midterms. That's number one, too. But it's completely opposite of what he ran on. We elected President Trump because we felt he was the man of peace. We felt he would have these conflicts, what's taking place in the Middle East with Israel and its neighbors, the war in Ukraine. We thought this would all be done by now. That's why we elected him. We know that Joe Biden, the Democrats, were going to allow that to continue on as so long as it wanted to go on for. So we elected him in good faith because we thought this would end all this, not to get us in different wars. But yeah, here we are. And the economy is in trouble right now. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But the idea that his advisors are now coming to him, likely probably the same advisors that got him into this conflict, by the way, are now coming in and asking for an exit plan. We're talking about spiking oil prices, concerns that obviously the political backlash from this, because it's not popular with the American people. And people will remember that when they go to the polls, either in the primary and in the general election for these midterms. And if President Trump loses the midterms, really his career is over as a president. He'll be bogged down by the Democrat for the remaining 2 years. Won't get much accomplished of his agenda. And that means Republicans lose out as a result of this. So we've got a lot of problems moving ahead. And again, this is just another indicator to me that this war is not going so very well. That's just, again, my take on it. But again, if the war is going well, you wouldn't tell your president, hey, we got to get out of this. We got to move from this. You don't have the support from the American people. The American people are upset that gas prices are going up. One of the few things that you actually dropped was gas prices. Now we're seeing prices at the pump beginning to go up. And going up very quickly, too, might I add. So will he listen to these advisors, looking for another way out? Seeing the Iranians are not backing down, I don't know how that would turn out as well. Either way, it's not going to be popular. We're also getting reports from the likes of Secretary Pete Hegseth that the Iranian stockpiles are down. Majority of the IRGC missile launchers are destroyed. Missiles deployed are down 90%. We also hit some 2,000 targets. Again, which to me is trivial, doesn't matter. Because they're not backing down. They've said this. Does Arachi sound like he is scared? Is he wanting a deal? He said nothing of the sort. Certainly nothing a leader would say in a time of crisis for their own country. Which, again, I think the United States is definitely making some marks on these targets. Don't think that, Tehran is safe. We're seeing casualties across the board, but I don't think it's anything that's going to cause them to surrender their sovereignty. I just don't feel that way. Now, the reason for that, of course, and by the way, the reason why the 90% being deployed is down has nothing to do with their stockpiles. This is what people don't understand. The reason for that is because the Iron Dome isn't functioning properly. And their missiles, think of their THAAD, their Patriot defense missiles, their stockpiles are low, or they're just simply not working properly. And Iran doesn't have to shoot as many missiles because they will simply end up hitting their targets as expected. What they were doing before was they were lobbing several missiles. Iron Dome would go up, intercept some of them, and then, you get one or two missiles that would breach that and actually hit their target. They don't have to do that anymore. So naturally, of course, the amount of missiles deployed is going to be a lot less lower. So let's just all keep that in mind moving forward as well. Don't think of that it's because they haven't stocked up. They have a lot in their arsenal. And they've said they've been preparing for this for quite some time right now. So I think they're very confident in their ability that they have enough to outlast Israel and the United States. Paul Craig Roberts, by the way, in his article today, by the way, brilliant article, good piece. I implore everybody to read the entirety of it. He asked another good question about this. If the war is nearly over ahead of schedule, how come on March 8th the U.S. State Department ordered a non-emergency of U.S. government employees and families to leave Saudi Arabia due to safety risks? How is the war that has expanded to Saudi Arabia nearly over? That's a good question. And by the way, he also quotes from Alexander Dugin, a Russian philosopher, and he quotes him saying that missile and drone strikes have been carried out against all U.S. bases surrounding Iran. According to neutral estimates, more than 1,000 American service members have been killed. Now, if that is true, and the number is not the 7 that we have been told thus far, of course, with other casualties of people that have been injured, but if we have 1,000 actual deaths as a result of this in 10 days, again, that is simply unacceptable, folks. I pray to God that's not the case. I don't know how they would tell us this. Any number of our best and bravest is horrible to hear this. And of course, what their families must be going through. I don't know how you would even keep a secret like that for so long. Obviously, you would see people in the press coming out and obviously revising those numbers because people would speak out against that. But if the real number is 1,000 in just 10 days of war, this war is certainly reprehensible. And even worse so if we've been lied to about what's actually taking place. What is actually taking place to our service members. And to put them in this situation, which is unprovoked, which is a war of aggression, is completely ridiculous to me. It's beyond my comprehension why we put anyone in harm's way for this type of war. It's really shocking to me. Now, some of you have asked me, moving on, and again, like I told you before, I pray that that number is not 1,000. I just pray every single day now that hopefully he's wrong. I hope Alexander Dugin is 100% incorrect on that statement. I hope it's very much over-exaggerated. I'll just put it to you that way. But I always will pray for our troops and their safety anywhere they are in the world. Some of you have asked me about the markets. And you're saying that the markets are returning to normal like President Trump has said it would. It was temporary. Trust the plan, 5D chess. I say, all right. I say to you, you have to understand something, though. We're in the early stages of this war. The war that they've estimated that will go on for probably a couple months now, despite what you're hearing from the White House currently. The bottlenecking, the supply chain issues have not yet hit the United States. So President Trump's rhetoric and his reassurances that this war is almost over gives a sigh of relief to the investors, of course. But what happens when those investors begin to see the elements of things such as inflation, such as the supply chain not working, or the supply's not coming in. The demand's not being met. It's economics 101, folks. Prices were going to go up, panic sets in, and the markets will reflect on that, especially if we have supply chain issues. Look no further than COVID, so you can recall exactly what took place then. But then we also have to consider, take a look at the Gulf Arab states right now. And we also see that the imports and exports coming out of the region are not happening. We're not seeing any of it. That strait is shut down. Paul Roberts even commented on this. He said, combined with the blocking of the Strait of Hormuz, this has already led to enormous losses for the global market. Moreover, the situation will worsen each day of the Iranian resistance. And he's absolutely right about that. What are these countries going to do that have 8, maybe a week's left or so of food because they import all their food into the country, primarily? What are these people going to do? What happens to a country like Bahrain, whose desalination plant, where they get all their access to drinking water, is shut down from? What are they going to do? How will you get fresh water into the region? You're not. So what happens to these people? You have to ask yourself. So it's going to get worse before it gets better. Mark my words on that, but you're going to see what takes place in the Gulf Arab states get worse very quickly, and you will see the European and the Asian markets get worse first before it gets to the United States. Well, Brent crude and WTI are down about 10% today, and that's why a lot of people are saying, oh, good, it was just temporary. It was just a day. It was a couple of days worth of, gas that was, 50% more, or 50 cents more. Today, now it's in the high 80 range per barrel for Brent crude and WTI. But I look at my results for my weekly economic report. On February 13th, WTI was about $62 a barrel, and Brent crude was about $67.22 per barrel, I believe it was what it was. So we've gone up considerably, folks, since then. And again, our markets will lag what is happening inside the European and the Asian markets first. So if you want to look to see how it'll turn out for us, go look and see what's happening there. It's probably going to hit Asia a little bit harder than it will Europe, but both will be affected by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And you can believe me when I tell you, these nations will not be happy with us if their economies crumble because of an unprovoked war with Iran. It's just the way it's going to be. Now, whether our relationship continues with them, whether they let us rebuild our bases, or whether they tell us to get the hell out, I don't know. Only time will tell. But there will be a lot of re-examining of our relationship with a lot of these countries, on their behalf, by the way. And we have a complacent, we have a servile, we have a do-nothing Republican Party inside of Congress that could have prevented this war from getting further out of hand, preventing further economic hardships from happening, and they chose not to. Who do they answer to? Not to their constituents, not to the American people. Certainly not. You have Lindsey Graham cracker going on saying that he's going to go to South Carolina and suggest that men and women alike should go to war for Israel? How the hell does this guy get elected? Makes no sense to me. Absolutely no sense to me at all that these people can get away with this. But this is who they are. This is what they would like. This is what they want. And as a result of it, we find ourselves further pushing this conflict. As noble, as just, as, national security, saving the country, when it's nothing of the sort. Nothing of the sort. And you know exactly why I feel that way. You can just go listen to my shows from yesterday. In last week, of course. But before I move on, I want to go over one more topic on this issue. This is out of Newsweek, and I want to set the record straight on what's taking place here. And we got to go over this. This is important, too. It says that Trump says Iran has Tomahawk missiles when asked about deadly school strikes. So this is a topic that's been coming up, I believe, on the first day that we were back on air, and I talked to you about this. I said that we killed at least 165 children inside this elementary school that is located near, that's about a half a mile or so away, maybe a little less, from a military base. It's on a compound that's very close to it. Now, President Trump said that Iran has had access to U.S.-made Tomahawk cruise missiles when asked whether the United States would accept responsibility for a strike on the girls' school. And, of course, it killed at least 165 6 to 12-year-old girls. Horrific, of course. But when he was speaking to reporters, Trump said that the missile used in the strike could have come from Iran or another country, arguing that the Tomahawk is widely available. So I want to pause here really quickly and just let everybody know Iran does not have Tomahawk missiles. I'm just going to tell it to you like that. Where the hell would they get Tomahawk missiles from? Who would have given them Tomahawk missiles, and why would we have intelligence letting us know that, by the way, that a country is giving them Tomahawk missiles? Now, he tries to water it down. He says, whether it's Iran or somebody else, the Tomahawk is very generic. He said, adding that the missile is sold and used by other countries, and Iran also has some Tomahawk missiles. There's no proof of that. I'm just going to be honest with you. There's no proof for this. It's manufactured inside the United States by defense contractors like Raytheon, for example. And it's been sold to countries like Japan or Australia. Okay, fine. Japan and Australia, we know, have them. Did they give them to Iran? I think we would know whether or not they would have them, or if they were brought there. I think our intelligence would easily be able to tell us this. So the idea, though, and here's the part of this quagmire that gets to me. The idea that Iran would fire a missile just back on itself, first of all, it's pretty stupid, I would have to say. I think people would notice this in the city of Tehran. A city of 10 million people would see a missile go up and come straight back down. But here's the problem. The school in question right now, this elementary school, was hit at about 7:15 in the morning, right around the first strikes of this conflict. And I'm told there were 5 different missiles that hit this compound. Again, this school is not a part of the military base, but it's very closely related. It's almost like it's linked to it. But it's about, I believe, just under a half a mile away from it. Okay. The problem with all this is, I told you before, 7:15, their time, the missiles start going in, right? They start hitting their targets. They're hitting areas they feel have either storage of missiles or what have you in these military bases. So they're hitting all these buildings near this compound. But the problem is, Iran did not fire off any of their shots from their missile stockpiles until 10 a.m. that morning. So it's not like these two things were happening simultaneously, right? You have incoming missiles from U.S. and Israel, and you have Iran also retorting in the same. That's not what was taking place. So if we know for a fact that Iran fired their first missile in retaliation at 10 a.m. after the school was hit, how the hell could it be Iran that fired the missile? And where is the evidence that they even have Tomahawk missiles? They don't. They don't at all. But this is what we get. This is what we get from our press. This is what we get from our government. Oh, well, it's probably the Iranians. They have awful precision. They've been known to do this, right? That's what we keep hearing. I'm sorry, folks. Are we not the ones that are hitting civilians right now? Who do you think's affected when you hit an oil deposit right in the middle of Tehran? The Iranian people. Anyways, here was President Trump deflecting on this, trying to get around this. I don't know how this will work out for him, especially when this is proven to be true. Take a listen.
Mr. President, did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hickson? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still investigating.
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
We think it was done. We think it was done by Iran.
Can you give us an idea?
Because they're very inaccurate, as you know, with their munitions. They have no accuracy whatsoever. It was done by Iran.
So they're saying it was Iran. There's no proof it's Iran, but they're saying it's Iran right now. Why? Because it covers, them. But here's the problem. With all this, again, they say, who only attacks civilians is Iran. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just told you, Iran hasn't attacked anybody. As a country, as a government. I'm not talking about their proxies. I'm talking about them going out and attacking with their own nation. They haven't attacked anybody since the 1700s, the late 1700s, folks. So what do you mean they're targeting civilians? Where are they targeting civilians? again, it doesn't follow up with logic. But thankfully, folks, Scott Ritter has a brilliant assessment. I'm going to play this for you. It's a little lengthy, so I'll probably cut it at some point. But I want you to hear from him directly. He has the information on this. You're not getting any of this in your mainstream news or your publications. So I want you to hear it from him because he found the research, he understands the technology, and he knows exactly what took place. And you're going to be a little bit devastated when you hear exactly what happened to these young girls. It's a little troubling, but you need to know the truth. So here it is.
You have the third facility that had been struck, partial collapse, but here they saw people running around. Here they saw people moving in, assembling, people coming in off the streets. And a decision was made that this must be a very important site. So they sent the cruise missile in to strike it. But not just that, it didn't just hit with the dual phase warhead. The Block 4 has the capacity to take unexpended fuel and use it as a fuel air explosive to create a thermobaric effect. And so this missile went in to the building, didn't just explode conventionally, but went in with a thermobaric effect, a deliberate choice made by the targeteers. Now, what had happened, though, is that first missile that hit the school. And the majority of the students survived. There were some that were killed in the initial strike, but the teachers took the survivors and moved them into the prayer hall, which was a part of the facility that remained intact. They called up the parents, most of whom lived locally. The parents began to arrive to pick up their children. Majority were concentrated in this prayer hall when the decision was made to restrike. This cruise missile came down, penetrated, blew up, and then the thermobaric explosion hit. Listen to how the parents described the condition of their children's bodies. Burned to a crisp. There was nothing left. This was a deliberate action by American planners. We know how many cruise missiles were struck. Each cruise missile had a target put into it. We know that there was a restrike. We know this without any doubt. The President of the United States is either a liar or has been told bad information, and Hegseth knows the truth.
Okay, so you get the picture here. This bomb that was used, this cruise missile, was able to take the remaining fuel inside of it, and what it does is it kind of vaporizes, so the explosion spreads throughout, if you'll understand that correctly. So in other words, it expands and goes throughout the entire room. So the whole place was probably just engulfed in flames at that point with this type of cruise missile that hit the building. Awful to hear this, especially from parents who obviously would have seen this missile incoming, hitting the building. And the question is, well, why would you hit the building? Why would the Iranians hit the building twice, right next to the area where they're being bombed? Are we denying that we bombed the other sites in the facility? The empty warehouses? I mean, we have to understand what's going on here. And then the Newsweek article also says satellite analysis suggests the U.S.'s involvement in this. Experts interviewed by the Associated Press said that the satellite imagery and video analysis suggests that the school was likely struck amid a rapid sequence of munitions hitting the nearby compound. So everything Scott Ritter says just works right out, folks. There was initial strikes. They've determined that some of them were hit. The missile did their job, but the one that hit the school, they didn't see smoke billowing out of the school. They saw people running around outside of it. Obviously, they have the footage from this. And they decided to strike it again. Now, whether they knew it was a school or not is irrelevant. We hit the target. We killed the children. We killed the school, teachers, the staff. And we've got to own up to that. We've got to own up to that. And the person who knows that this is true is 100% Pete Hegseth. 100% correct. Scott Ritter's correct on this. Pete Hegseth knows exactly what took place. He's deflected several times. We're doing an investigation. We're looking into, well, it's the Iranians that target their own people, the civilians. That's what they do. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculousness when you hear this. So this disgusts me on such a huge level that first of all, that this happened. That moments after this war began, we're actually hitting and killing young girls 6 to 12 years old who went to school because they believed The United States was in good faith talking with Iran. They were coming together to negotiate, that there would not be a war, that we scheduled another round of talks. Had that not have happened, do you think a lot of those parents would have sent their children to school that day? Probably not. So this is true, folks, and I do believe this is true. We have blood on our hands. And we got on up to that, and somebody has got to be held accountable for this. Whoever allowed this strike to happen, that targeted a school with children, and by the way, Scott goes over, I'm not going to play the entire audio clip, it's very long. But he said that any type of military job like that, before any type of strike, they go in and reassess former layout. So, for example, if it was the military base, right? Let's say every one of those buildings was once a military base. It's the job of the United States to go in and actually determine whether or not that site is being used to, again, house people, or if it's a school, or whatever it might be. But that way you know exactly where your military site is to target. That way you don't hit a school with children in it. And the idea that we doubled down on that and actually hit it a second time goes to show you that they did not do their due diligence. They did not follow through on a Biden-era command and edict that, yes, you have to go in and assess everything. You can't let AI just determine where this missile is going to go and where it's going to drop, and if you're going to do a double tap on it because you think it hasn't been effective, or you think the people running around outside are, members of the military or the IRGC or what have you. Someone has got to be held accountable, because this, again, folks, is illegal. 100% illegal in war. And that's all I'll leave you with on the topic of war today. I know I harp on this a lot, folks, but I want you to have the information. I want you to have the right information at hand, because you're not getting it in the mainstream press, by and large. So that's why I want to tell you that, and I want to share that with you so you have an idea of what actually is going on right now. All right, let's move on. I've got an article in Fox Business just to, again, discuss our economy. It says here that Americans tap retirement funds at record rates as mounting financial stress takes its toll on us. Well, no shock there. The Vanguard Group reported that 6% of the participants in a 401k plan administered by the firm took hardship withdrawals in 2025. So this isn't even a result of the current war inside Iran. This is last year and the year before. 6% in 2025, 4.8% in 2024. Now, this figure is well above the pre-pandemic average of about 2% of the 401k plan participants per year who make these hardship withdrawals from their retirement plans. And by the way, I know people that have done this before. I know people that they go in, they want to make an investment in something. They need some cash, so they go in and take some money out. It's not an unheard of thing. But when you have people that are doing this more frequently and at a much higher rate, that's very indicative about what's going on in your economy. Now, the report noted that the hardship withdrawals can be a sign of financial stress as workers tap into their 401ks as a safety net that can help them cover unanticipated expenses or emergency costs. Well, naturally, right, when you see the cost of living going up, when you see inflation rising 3% from December 2024 to December 2025, in that span of time, when we see things like the CPI index going up, the cost of homes, again, going up, all these things have a factor in all this. But it also tells me another thing, too. It shows me that people are either worried about what's going on, or they simply don't have enough money to continue to survive as they had been. We saw a massive amount of inflation. Again, and this goes back to Biden's last year in office. It was starting to uptick. But it goes to show you that the economy has not yet recovered from that. While inflation has gone down under President Trump, prices are still up significantly since the start of 2021. And those prices have yet to come down to reasonable levels where people who, let's say they're on, a pension program or they retired within the last 5 years, they need more money to have the same certain type of lifestyle. Or maybe they just need more money. We have to take all these things into account, especially low-income workers or modest increases in the pricing that they may experience. All these things are a factor in all this. So instead of getting into a war inside the Middle East, why not try to work on reducing prices? Why not do that? Now, the report also says that the participants were focused on financial goals throughout 2025, and we saw an average account balances rise by 13% due to positive market performance. Vanguard noted that 45% of 401k participants increased their deferral rate on their own or through an automatic annual increase. Yeah. So this is where we are now. People are going into their retirement funds, and they're working on ways to get money so they can live as if they did pre-pandemic levels. This is what it's coming down to right now. So Trump has got to focus on this. This is the exact group Trump has got to focus on. I told you many times, if he doesn't focus on the economy, if he doesn't focus on getting the prices down across the board, that means working with inside the United States, getting manufacturing back. We lost over, I believe, it was 100,000 manufacturing jobs in 2025. So that means you're getting those same products from somewhere else. That means they cost more. Then you start slapping on those tariffs, things cost even more. That's what people don't understand. And if you're on a fixed income, or if you're retired, or if you're a low-income worker, and let's say you just have a 401k and you decide to take money out of it, all this is a result of what's going on in our current economy. We've got to get the prices down to a reasonable level because we haven't seen wages match the level of inflation we've seen in the last 5 years, not by a long shot. Now we can brag that, yes, wages have gone up, but they haven't met the demands of which the inflation rate has gone up. And that's a big problem. Because anytime you have inflation like that, you lose out on your purchasing power. So when I see that people are going into their 401k hardship withdrawals, this just tells me this is happening because our economy is not working for us. We have got to get back on the right track. We've got to cut down on spending. I know people don't want to hear that. That would be the correct way to go about things. Cut government spending. Invest in the United States. We should be having manufacturing with 100,000 more jobs in 2025, not losing them. That's the exact opposite of the Trump doctrine. We want to bring the manufacturing back to the United States, not export it out again. And when I hear figures like that, 100,000 jobs lost just in the manufacturing sector, that tells me that we're bringing in more products from abroad. And then it makes clear to me that that's why China has such a large surplus, despite obviously reducing the number of imports coming in the country because of these tariffs now. So not only do you have your reliance on imports coming in the country, but now you have tariffs on them, which means the companies make more, the middlemen make more, the retailer business makes more, and you just pay more money out of your own pocket. How does that help America become more prosperous? How does that make America a better place? You cannot simply rely on imports, ladies and gentlemen. You have to start producing here in the United States. Make things more cost effective, lower the taxation. I don't care what you do, but make it a business-friendly climate. And I know we have state governments, too, that do things, and obviously they make the cost of living in their own states completely unaffordable. Believe you me, I lived in California for quite some time. I understand this. But we've got to get on the right track with this. We're not getting back on. We're on the sideline of it going, yeah, okay, we could do some things here. Okay, we're seeing a little bit of progress. We've got to get on the right track here. And Trump has limited time to get us back on that right track. Otherwise, he will see Republicans lose in this upcoming midterm. Mark my words on that. And I also want to talk to you really quickly. This is out of Quartz. We're talking about AI, right? That's the new big thing. AI. What's AI going to do for us? Everyone's excited about AI. Right? We're not excited it's going to use so much electricity and power, but we're excited about what it offers us, right? It's what the future is, AI. We know that China's leading in that. We know that India is probably a close second. We know that we're probably a distant third in that realm. But the part of AI that's devastating to many people, myself included, is that AI is actually going to be taking people's jobs. And that's what this article discusses very close. Now, they kind of word it in a different way to make it sound like it's not really the AI's fault, but it is the AI's fault. This is what we're going to be relying on. Now, it says here, a simple and accurate explanation of the wave of white-collar layoffs sweeping across industries is becoming increasingly clear. AI isn't replacing white-collar workers. It's displacing the cash once used to pay them. See how they word that so differently? Well, companies cutting corporate payrolls to fund their pushes into data centers and other AI-focused investments. Well, that tells you everything. I can't use you anymore. I'm going to put the money I was paying you, and I'm going to put it into the data center. I'm going to focus on these AI-focused investments. I'm going to focus on this AI technology. I don't need you to come in from 9 to 5 anymore. I can have this technology work 24/7 if I wanted to. Or, for example, they could use automation, right? So they word it a little differently in this article. But the point is, you're having these companies like, for example, Oracle here in this article. Layoffs are coming to reveal, obviously, that, what does it say here? Perhaps as many as 30,000 in the in the largest ever restructuring as management prepares to take the company's cash flow negative for the next several years. Okay. So look, they're getting rid of these jobs. They're focused on AI doing everything for them, which, again, I've been told, by the way, AI is not always better than actual human beings, and, of course, their discernment. Look what just took place with that school inside Iran. AI can't determine if there's innocent people in these buildings, but AI knows that it can attack. This is how these programs work, and the same, I would imagine, would take place in any other type of business structure. So now you have the leadership is spending so aggressively on these data centers to keep up with other companies, right? Amazon, Microsoft, you name it. Oracle has to get some money, and of course they cut labor costs as a result of it. So that's why your jobs are being displaced. That's why you're getting laid off and furloughed. So the question is, can AI actually replace a white-collar job? Is true. Absolutely true. AI doesn't have to replace the white-collar knowledge because the AI can do it themselves. The AI never calls in sick or wants to take a break or any of the other things. AI will just work. It'll work. So it's cost effective. Why do you think you see at McDonald's? Again, I don't ever go to McDonald's, believe you me. Why do you think they have kiosks now? Instead of people standing there saying, "Hi, can I take your order?" Because the kiosk can just do that job for them. So you could argue, well, hey, McDonald's just putting money in the kiosks. They're not just, leading to fire people. Well, yeah, they are. That's exactly what they're doing. So we see this taking place, and it's going to be something that is going to become the norm very soon. I read you a little while ago, and I believe it was in a Fox News article, that 11.7% of the existing jobs in America can be replaced with AI. So that would be, again, very devastating to especially the employment in this country. And what do you do with these people now? People that have these degrees in engineering, in technology, in different fields. What do you do with these people now? What jobs can they do? What will they do? That's the big question here. So are we going to save these jobs, or are we going to simply allow them to just go away? Are people just going to be unemployed in these fields working forward? Or will they be so limited that nobody even wants to go into them? Now, these types of patterns are very common, especially in places like Silicon Valley. Any of these tech booming areas, again, appear to be contributing to the company's growing emphasis on AI right now. So we've got to be very cognizant of what's going on here. What will these people end up doing? Are these good fields to even get into anymore? You once were probably feeling safe, like, oh yeah, I'm a computer programmer, I can go in. Well, now they just got the computer do it themselves. Now, someone has to program that model or that program. But that takes out a huge swath of people working in these fields. Now, Bloomberg said that the story puts it plainly, with Oracle planning to axe thousands of jobs among its employees, moves to handle a cash crunch from a massive AI data center expansion. So now they're working on the data centers, they're working on the infrastructure, of course, which President Trump has told them to do, have their own type of infrastructure, their own power grids that bring in their own energy to not take away from the existing infrastructure. But we see things like Microsoft, they're cutting 15,000 jobs. They did it last year. Again, what are they revamping though? They're revamping more data centers to historic levels. Amazon, same thing. I talked with you about that usually on our weekly economic report. They're investing heavily in AI right now. Maybe even a little bit too much. I think it was $200 billion they were investing. That's $200 billion not investing in their employment. And as a result of that, you've seen the cuts in the corporate payrolls amid this expansion growth taking place right now with all this. So when they tell you you're not losing your job because of ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever other AI bot program is out there, you kind of are, folks. So, I don't know, maybe it's time we went back and started working with our hands. I don't know. Are you going to have AI start building skyscrapers in New York City again? I don't know about that. But I do know that some of these tech jobs, they're not as reliable as one would have thought maybe 5, 6, 10 years ago. Who knows? All right, let's move on, folks. Let's move on from the AI sector. Let's move into Kentucky now. No, don't worry, there's no AI boom in Kentucky. At least I don't think so. Maybe there will be. Who knows? This out of the New York Post says Trump takes his war against Thomas Massie straight to his home of Kentucky. There we go. Why do we want to get rid of Thomas Massie, by the way? He's probably one of the few congressmen that actually works for the American people as a whole. Now, they target Thomas Massie as the 7-term congressional member who the White House has named the Democrats' favorite member, which is really stupid. First of all, this is stupid that Trump is doing this. Any free thinker out there would like what Thomas Massie's doing. He's a Republican. He's a conservative. Some people call him a libertarian. Fine, whatever. But the man follows through with the law. That's the only thing that should be important to anybody listening. That's really it. Now, Trump endorsed Massie's primary opponent, Ed Gallerine, who will be at the event that he's speaking at inside of Kentucky. But let me ask you this. Why would we want to get rid of a Thomas Massie? Because he's one of the last holdouts in the Republican Party that would speak out against the war in Iran, speaking out, of course, about releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files, which people are still very much interested in, by the way. But he gets to the bottom of issues that are very much important to Americans on both sides. We have Americans on both sides that don't want this war with Iran. We have Americans on both sides of the aisle that are very interested in what's taking place in the Jeffrey Epstein case. We know this. We know this is not just a partisan issue. People want to know, and we want accountability for what has taken place. So naturally, he's not going to go to war because he brilliantly stated just recently on the House floor, I played it for you last week, there is no evidence of us needing to go to this war. There's no imminent threat. There's no nuclear program that we know of. Nothing whatsoever. So why would we use the War Powers Act, which needs to indicate that provision that we have to go to war? So Trump sees this. He sees him as an opponent, not as a fellow Republican, because Massie is following the law in and out every single time. He's the one that helped co-author the Epstein transparency file release. He's gone on the floor and spoken out publicly about this, that we need to get to the bottom of this, that we need to hold Pam Bondi accountable. So Trump views these things as all threats, of course. Massie did not support the Big Beautiful Bill, which is President Trump's, signature domestic policy agenda. He has criticized President Trump's foreign policy and, of course, accused him of executive overreach for his attacks, for example, on drug boats in the Caribbean. You'll all remember that. Well, again, Massie's right about this. How do I know Massie's right about this? Because I told you about this. Folks, we have to follow international law. There is no international law that says, if you feel like it, blow up a boat. You call them an alleged drug boat, we blow it up. Say no drugs are coming to America. This is, by the way, the Pete Hegseth had mind space about this. See a boat, blow it up, call it a drug boat. Give a little bit of warning to Maduro before you invade and abduct him in the middle of the night without any pretext, without any type of due process. Folks, I want to say this to you too. Every single person that comes in contact with the United States government is allowed that right to due process. I know people think that the Constitution only applies to American citizens, and by and large it does. But you have to read the text. Just blowing up a boat for reasons of you thinking that it's a drug boat violates all due process. Police just can't come into your house and start shooting, can they? Because they think you're a drug dealer. No. They have to follow due process. Now, if there's something violent that occurs, then obviously that would happen, but we haven't seen that at all in any of these strikes that have claimed over, I believe, 114 lives. And there is no due process. There is no following international law. And the part that was really bad was when that time we hit a drug boat, and then we went on to kill the survivors of that. International law says you have to go in and actually rescue those people. Whereas we went on and said, you know what, we could just kill them again. It's okay. No due process, not trying to stop the boat, not identifying there's anything, any contraband or anything illegal on the boat. Just us hitting the boat. So if you can't do it inside the United States, what makes you think it's okay to do in international waters? Hitting boats that have no way to even reach any part of the United States. I mean, these are boats that probably could make it 60 miles at tops. I mean, so speaking out against that, I spoke out against that. I cover the information to you. And I told you too. A boot made it on the shores of Trinidad. And they identified it as a Trinidadian fisherman. The family identified that. Yeah, these are his boots. So we're not even hitting the targets, of course, of which we're saying are drug boats. We're hitting actual other fishing boats. We hit a Colombian fishing boat, for God's sakes. I'm all about due process. You want to detain the boat when it's entering United States shores? Absolutely, 100%. Detain the boat, check the boat, arrest the people on the boat, try the people. That's due process. That's following the law. When you just say, hey, we found a ship that's, a speedboat leaving Venezuela, that's probably a drug boat, let's hit it, that's not following international law. It just is, that's just the way it is, folks. There's no other way I could spin that for you to tell you that it's correct. So when Massie speaks out about these things, I agree with him. I think he's correct on a lot of these issues. But the idea that Trump, who is going to try to get rid of Massie, who, by the way, votes with the Republicans, I think 92% of the time, and suggesting he's a Democrat is completely foolish. Nobody buys this nonsense. He's probably one of the few stalwart conservatives we have left inside the Congress right now. They tried this last time, by the way. They tried to throw a bunch of money in his last election. They failed miserably. And I hope to God they failed miserably yet again. All right, folks. I got a few moments remaining in today's program. Let me go over this article in the Children's Health Defense. And it says, a giant problem. Experts address massive epidemic vaccine injury. Well, we're going back to Operation Warp Speed, are we? It says the United States must address the massive epidemic vaccine injury, according to doctors, scientists, lawyers alike, and medical freedom activists who spoke in D.C. at a roundtable hosted by the Maha Institute. So the Maha Institute, President Mark Gorton, told the Defender that the massive epidemic of vaccine injury, which I believe is short for MEVI, is a giant problem. And he wanted to say, I want people to understand that the vaccine injuries are common and they're all around. Vaccine injuries dwarf the benefits of the vaccination itself. Well, he's absolutely right about this. And by the way, we talked about this on the show last year. I know I talked about this in 2025. But we talked about how the vaccine was not properly safety tested. It was just pushed out. We saw the Biden regime using things like OSHA to try to coax employees to take the shot to maintain their current employment status, which, again, I think should be absolutely legal. I don't think you should be putting things in your body you don't want. But when you have no safety testing, and when you see some of the adverse effects of what these vaccines did, for example, when you see things like, especially in children, myocarditis, pericarditis, heart attacks, strokes. I mean, you saw this in parts of Europe too, folks. You'll remember this. In parts of Europe, you had people, for example, on soccer fields, some of the best, most athletic athletes in the world, dying on the field. You saw this with football players, dying on the field. All these things are a very big cause for concern, folks. And the idea that we're just bringing this to light, I think, is a good thing, of course. But we need to look at the actual statistics. You'll remember I told you before, it was 2.6 million people on the VAERS report. That is the Vaccine Adverse, Vaccine Adverse Injuries Reporting Survey, I believe is what it's called. 2.5 million people since the vaccine was first administered. That's a lot of people, folks, and that should not stand. I hope we'll get to the bottom of this. Folks, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you so much. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, God bless.